So then let's just move on. So today we're going to be going, so I'm going to kind of split this into two parts. We're going to be going over some of Python's data structures, um, just so that we kind of know how to use them, because most of the time you'll be given, you won't be given an exact amount of variables, or you'll be given like 300. And obviously you don't want to create a variable for every single one of those. So by using data structures, we can very efficiently store a whole bunch of data and also have it be organized in a way that we want it to be, so it's extremely fast to do certain operations. So let's go ahead and I'll go start sharing my screen here and pull up my lesson plan. Okay, so the first thing I kind of wanted to go over is I kind of glossed over loops last week. And I just want to kind of touch on a few things that you might find useful while you're using loops. So the first thing is breaking from a loop. So for example, this is usually used for a while loop. So a lot of times, while you may have like, for example, may have like while j is less than 0, or like first j equals 0, and then while j is less than 5, and then yada yada yada, right? At times this isn't as controlled as that, so your conditions might actually change depending on what happens, right? So for example, if you have another like thing like e equals 5, right? Like for example, if e is odd, you might want j to be less than 5 for breaking. If e is even, you want j to be greater than 5, or whatever, right? So a lot of times how that's implemented is to not put all of your conditions in here, but it's to literally put a true, so it goes on forever. But then you use the break statement. So whenever you use the break statement, that terminates the loop. So for example, if I have I equals 0, and then I'll say I plus, I'll go ahead and print I, and I'm going to say if I is equal to 5, then we'll go ahead and break. So now, if I go ahead and run this, you'll see that it only goes, whoops, I didn't go up. If you do that, you can see it only ends on 5. So that's extremely useful just if you don't want to worry about having one giant one-liner, because one, that's really hard to read, and also that's hard to maintain, because if you have, it's extremely blurry from you. I honestly, is it bad for everyone else? So you guys, it's all blurry for all of you. Has reduced video quality. That is interesting. All right, I'll try restarting the stream. And here, I'll rejoin on a different connection. Okay, is this slightly better? I'm on direct connection to Discord now, so other than that, I can't really do much. Yes. No. Okay, well, I'm going to assume that it's fine now. But just also make sure that when you guys are watching this, that you're also kind of near your Wi-Fi router or on a computer, because it will also suffer if you are not close to Wi-Fi too. But anyway, so that is break. Extremely, extremely useful. It looks very not useful, but it is actually extremely useful. It looks very simple, but this allows you to do incredibly complex logic without having to figure it all out at the beginning. Another thing that I want to touch on is continue. So this is kind of break, but it only skips that iteration. So for example, I'll say while if I equals, let's say like 15, it'll break. But then after, if I is equal to 6, it'll continue. So what that means is it'll stop. Oops. If I do this right before, so you have to click and join the live stream. I can see here only 13 people are watching. So if you want to see my screen, you're going to have to click on me and then click watch stream. You still can't see what I'm typing. Okay. It's too small. Okay. Well, I can definitely fix that. Well, this is already gigantic, honestly. We'll go to 300%. Okay. Is this better? Okay. All right. So we'll keep it at 300% from now on. Okay. So again, break will immediately terminate the loop, and then continue will only skip that iteration. Okay. Yeah. So if it's not loading for you, just hop out and then hop back in, and then usually that should fix it. Otherwise, I can try restarting again if it doesn't work for you. Because right now we have. So no, you can't say return because you're not. Okay, well, return is usually just meant for functions, and that'll completely just get you out of the function. So proper form would be for you to use continue and break. So like for example, if this were to be in a function, and we'll talk about functions later. Return is to return something, so that means you're stopping the function. So if I do break and I want to do something after this, like say that, if I put return, if I call the function here, oh boy. But if I call the function, if I call return over here, this will not say hello. So there's a difference, and I would use continue only in functions. Does that answer your question? All right, cool. So yeah, but we'll talk about functions later. Honestly, while we're starting off, it's not too useful. But once we get into some more complex problems, it can be good for you to use. But again, so as you can see here, if I have, let's make sure I don't have that logic error now. But if I have this over here, we can see that it skips number 6. So it continues the loop, but it just skips that iteration. So this is useful if you want to ignore one value or something. You can just skip over it. So any questions about these two loop control variables? I can't make the screen any bigger. This is as big as it'll go. I can make my text even bigger, but oh my gosh. Here, I'll make it like 16. Okay. So yeah, but see, when I get too big, then we don't have very much to work with now. So we might look into going off of YouTube where we have a 1080p stream and not 720p. Okay, there we go. So, any questions about continue and break? Yeah, there also is. If you want to do that, you can just pop it out. If you go, and just, I think you like right click or something. Yeah, you just click on it, and then after you have pop out on the bottom right corner. Great. Okay, guys. So now that that's covered, do you guys have any questions about any of the problems that were assigned? Did any of you do the problems? Here, let's make this. Okay, here, let's have a poll. Okay, and please be honest, right? It's not like you're not getting graded or something. This is just to know how fast I should go. So I'm going to create a poll. So just, and I'll say, okay. So just please just react in the juniors dash polls. And I'll go ahead and close that. So again, junior dash polls, just please vote so I know how fast I should be going and whether I should be addressing some of these problems. Okay, so it looks like most of you either did them all or did just like one or two of them. So that's good. But again, I would just encourage you to, if you have time, of course, to just to do more problems, especially at the very least the ones that I give you. I don't generally give too many. These really just honestly take maybe 10 or 15 minutes. You do like one a day or something. And it really helps you with just understanding how all these contests work and kind of knowing the ins and outs of the programming language. Okay. But anyway, so this week we'll be going into some data structures. So last week we were kind of usually working with variables, right? So we'd say like A equals whatever, B equals, that, and C equals this. But let's say they'll say, oh, well, I'm going to give you 1 to 50 numbers. So we don't want to have like, A, B, C, D, E, right? Like that's ridiculous. So we have these data structures that allow us to more easily store these values. So, sorry, does anyone have a question? All right. So, before that, actually, let's do something else that I also forgot to do is some more string functions. So we did like string splicing, right? Slicing last time. So we did like, for example, right, if we went like this, we'd get, whoops. Right, we can get a subset of the string. However, there are a few other things that you might find useful, right? That was almost a bad word. It's good. So the first thing is .count. So if I say, let's go sheep, and I .count sheep, this will tell me how many times this substring sheep occurs in this string. So if I just run this in the shell, you can see that it occurs 3 times. So for example, if it's giving you like wins and losses, you can easily just say, oh, well, right, like I have a WL, WWWL. I can just .count and I say, oh, well, I won 5 times or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty useful. Instead of having to go through individually and count. And another thing that's pretty useful is dot find. So let's say we have like sheep, and we want to find the occurrence of the first E. We can do that, and we can see that that is at position 2. All right, and if we want to just skip that, we already found one. We can go ahead and say dot find E, and then after we'll start at 3 instead. And this will skip the second one, and then it'll start at index 3. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3. So it starts at this one, and of course the third index is an E. Okay. Now let's say if you don't even have that, so if we like dot find Z, you'll see that this will just return -1. You guys might know of another method called dot index. So if you do that though, you'll see it throws a value error. So you guys can choose, but generally I'd use dot find. It's very similar to how dot index of works in many other languages. Okay, so any questions about these 3 string methods? Probably the most useful that I've used. So yeah. Any questions? All right, wonderful, great. So, let's move on now to lists. So, does anyone know what a list is? Does anyone know what a list is? Okay, what's an array? If you say it's just an array in Python, so what's an array? Would you like to unmute and explain to us? Yes, that is, yeah, that's pretty much it, right? So a list allows us to store, just like a list in real life, you can just store a whole bunch of different variables all into one, and then after they are referenced by their index. So this will be very similar to like a shopping list or whatever, right? You have, 1 is, apples, 2 is, peaches or whatever, right? Let's just say, let's go ahead and create a list here. So we do this by using square brackets. So let's say, I'll say hello equals, and then now in each one of these, what's the word for that? All right. So we can just create an empty list. So this is how you create an empty list. So there's nothing inside this right now. Now, there are 2 ways to actually add stuff to it. Well, there are actually more than 2, but 2 very common ways is one, if you already know all the values, you can hard code it. So you can say, and say good morning, right? So these are like, things you'd say to a person. And then after, if we run this, we can say hello. So now if we want to reference hello, this is the first element here. However, as we know from last week with string indexes start at 0. So this will be hello at 0, and that'll give us hello. Now, if let's say I wanted to add things to it, I can say hello dot append, and then I'll be able to add whatever I want. So now I can say good riddance. Whatever, right? So now if I say hello at 3, there'll be good riddance in there. Okay? So if you want to replace a value, you can do that. with a list. So let's say I want to replace hello with bonjour. So let's do that. And now if we look for the element at index 0, it is now bonjour. So that's direct replacement. Let's say we want to pop. So popping is when we remove a value and then after return it. So let's say if I just run pop without any parameters, it removes and returns the last element inside the list. So now if we go ahead and just type hello, we can see that it only consists of bonjour, bye, and good morning. However, you can give it a parameter here. So let's say an argument. So let's say index of 1. This will remove the second element. So this will remove bye. And now we have nothing. Well, we don't have bye in there anymore. All right. Next up is index. So this is the same as the string one. So we can go ahead and say hello.index and we'll find bonjour. This will give us index of 0 again. And let's see if I go ahead and just say hello.append, I'll append another bonjour. So now there are 2 bonjours in this list. So if I go hello.index, and then I'm going to start at index 1 now, you'll see that it'll be found at 2. Now there's another parameter of .index that you can use, and that is the end index as well. So for example, if I want to return nothing for some reason, I can say I start at 1 and stop at 1. And it'll say that bonjour is not in my list, but in reality, it's not within that that one little kind of range that I have defined. Okay, and the last kind of very common thing that we use is .remove. So .remove is similar to .pop. However, it is based on the value. So this will remove the first occurrence of a certain value in the list. So for example, if I wanted to remove the first bonjour, I would do that. And now you can see that the first bonjour is gone. Okay, so again, we just have .append, .pop, .index, and .remove as some very basic methods. Yeah, that's the word, methods. Okay, does anyone have any questions about these? Again, I'm just going a little bit fast. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. But most of you did say that you already know Python, so I just kind of want to give a quick overview of everything before we proceed any further. Jeez, you guys are like dead. I'm talking to myself here. All right, well, whatever. If you guys don't have any questions, that's good. So next thing is, let's say we want to pop, but we don't want to return something. We can use the del keyword. And now this will allow us to remove, for example, the first thing in hello. And now it'll just be bonjour. So this is more of a keyword. It's just a different way, but it just doesn't return it, unlike .pop. Okay, so you can kind of work with whatever you want. Isn't a huge difference, honestly. So the next thing we want to do is sorting. So sorting lists is very simple. So let's go ahead and just have some numbers in here. Now, well, these are in sorted order. I'm actually kind of an idiot here. Okay, so let's say I wanted to get all of these in like from 1 to 67, right? What I do is I can just use the .sort method. And now it sorts it in place. So that means that now hello is sorted. What? Okay, I I guess I forgot to run it again. So now, as we can see, it is sorted in ascending order. If we want to sort it in the descending order, we can just say reverse equals true. And now it goes the other way around. Okay. Now let's say we don't want to modify hello, but we want to just create a new list that is the sorted version of hello. Well, we can do that with a method called sorted. So let's just go ahead and rerun this to clear it. We can use the sorted function. And now we'll just put in hello. And this will give us the sorted version. However, if we go and actually look at hello, it is still unsorted. So this is useful for when you don't want to modify the list in place, if you're going to do other stuff with it afterwards as well. Sorted, of course, still has the same parameters. So you can just say reverse equals true, and then it'll be going from descending order. Okay. So any questions about that? Sorting lists. There's a lot more that you can do to actually control sorting, but we'll do that later. It's not really, we'll touch on that later. Good. Okay. All right. So now the last thing that I want to talk about is reversing. So let's say that we want to just reverse it. We don't want to actually sort it backwards. We can do that by using the dot reverse method. So now this will reverse it in place. So now we can see that it goes 2, 6, 1, 3, 6, 7, 67, 5. And again, we have the function version of it that isn't a method. So this will just, if we just say reversed, then hello, list, reversed, hello, we will get, this is the reversed order. Now do note that reversed actually returns an iterator. It doesn't actually return the object again. So you do need to put a list around it. So any questions about reversed? Good. All right. So last thing I want to talk about before I'm going to give you some time to work on a few questions here is going to be dot split. Now this is extremely useful because Python is line-based input. So if, for example, they're giving you a whole bunch of values that's separated by a space or something, you can't actually just get them individually. You need to get the line completely first. So splitting, what it does is it splits a string based on some character into a list. So for example, if I say hello, my name is David. If I dot split this by a space here, we'll see that it says hello, my name is David. So it's now a list, and every word that's separated by a space is now an element of the list. Now you can split by any character. You can say like so now as you can see, it gets rid of the separator, and then after it returns the list. Now, if you don't want to put the space here, it is implied that it is a space normally. So if you just dot split this normally, you'll get it as well. Okay, so generally you just do dot split because it's generally space separated. Now, let's say you wanted to split everything by a character. So you want to turn the whole word into a list. You can do that by just wrapping around list and just say hello, my name is David. And now every single character will be an element of a list. Okay, so any questions about splitting? This is extremely useful, especially in Python, due to the fact that you only have line-based input. All right. So before we move on, I'm going to give you guys around, let's say 30 minutes. And if you guys go into the lesson plan, which is posted in Junior Resources, if you guys go ahead and go into the data structures part 1, the lesson plan, if you scroll all the way down, you have some problems to try. So I would suggest that you guys, I would like you guys to do at least 1 or 2 of these questions right now. And then after, we can take one up if a lot of people are having problems with it. So let's just say, let's try to get definitely the first one done. And if you have time to do the second one, okay? And then we'll meet back at around 4:40. And I will stay in here. I'm going to go grab a drink though, but I'll stay in here if you guys have any questions, and then we'll take it up after. You and your friend have come up with a way to send messages back and forth. Your friend can encode a message by writing down a positive integer n and the symbol. You decode it by writing out that symbol n times in a row on one line, and just encode or decode it. So the first thing is it's saying how many lines are in the message. So let's go ahead and do num lines is going to be equal to the int of input. So this is the first line of input, right? So that's 4. So now we can say 4. Now for these ones where it's iterating through just the number of test cases, what I usually do is I just put like a random variable here, just because in like other languages, if you use like I or J, it has some pretty weird behavior. So I would just put some random variable that you're never going to use. Then after, we have num lines here. Now it's important in a contest thing to assume that what the input's going to give you, the input that they're going to give you is going to be valid, unless they say explicitly that it might not be valid. So for example, in a real life program, you'd actually want to check if the input that they gave you is actually a number. But in this case, we can just go ahead and trust that it is going to be a number. So next up, we want to actually find the number of times a symbol should be repeated. So let's do that by just using our split method. So if we go ahead and split this, we'll get an array of with the number, and then after the symbol. Okay, and now what we can do is we can literally say, again, we're going to assume that it's always going to be a number for the first one. So we can just say print info at 1, which is going to be the symbol, and we can multiply that by int of info at 0. So now you can see that we're just literally repeating this character over and over again. So if we go ahead and just call this CCCJ19J2, sorry, CCC19J2, and we run this, and we just give it the sample input here, we can see that it outputs everything correctly. Okay, and if we just look, I've already done this question a very long time ago. But essentially, that's what you do. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about the solution to the second one? Yes, no. No? Okay, great. So let's go ahead and move on then. Let's move on to list comprehension. Now, what is list comprehension? Now, this is a really nice feature of Python that isn't in, I don't think is in any other language. And it's super useful. So, for example, let's say we want to build a list of the numbers between 1 and 10. So right now what we do, we'd probably say for I in range 10, right? We can say, let's create a nums thing. The list, we'll say nums.append, and then we'll just say I plus 1, right? Because I is going to start at 0, we want to start at 1. So now, if we run this, we'll get nums, right? Pretty standard. Now there's actually an easier way to do this. So what we can use is called list comprehension. And essentially what it is it kind of is like it's this for loop, but all in one line. So instead what we can do is let's just comment all this out. Say nums equals, and now inside of the square brackets, we're going to put I plus 1 for I in range 10. So now if we run this, we can see that we get this exact same result. So the syntax for list comprehension is essentially the value that you want to put into the list at every iteration, and then after the loop. So right, this is equivalent to, do you see how, so we kind of, whoops. We've basically moved the for loop into here and then put whatever we put into nums.append at the very beginning. So does that make sense? Yes. So you can do this with anything, right? So like, for example, I can say for I in range, so I can say nums equals, and then I can say like word for word in input dot split. So now, as you can see, if I, whoops, if I do this, and I just say hello space bye, hello, goodbye, this will automatically be in nums, as you can see. Okay? So does that make sense? So here, again, we're iterating through, right? We're going through. So this is, again, the same as if we were to do nums was that. And then we're going to say for word in input dot split. Right? So we are going through every single element inside the array, the list that is returned by input dot split. And then we're going to append it to nums. Right? So same thing. Sorry, not this. Out. Right, we get the exact same result. Okay, so any questions about this? So a pound sign is a comment. So a comment basically means that it'll be ignored by Python. So for example, if I were to say print hello, it'll print hello, right? But then if I put a pound sign, now it's just putting 2 just for stylistic reasons. But if you put at least 1, it won't run. Oh, sorry. That's a bad example because it doesn't run regardless. Right, if I have print here, it says hello, but then once I put a pound sign, this is called a comment, right? It doesn't run it at all. Does that answer your question? It tells Python to ignore it. It doesn't get run. It's a comment. You use it to put comments in your code. So for example, if you have some incredibly complex function, you can say, okay, you can break it down. So for example, in my word right now I can say this will go through every word and print it. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Again, Please be sure to ask things, right? Because I went over comments last week. So if you have a question, please ask it. Otherwise, right, you don't want to be lost a few weeks down the line. So again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. But yeah, okay. So that is list comprehension. Any questions about list comprehension though? All right. Well, if you guys need any help, again, I'm always here. But we're gonna move on. So let's go ahead and move on to dictionaries. So for you guys know that lists, right? We have a list. Let's say names. Yang. All right. And so for example, we're to say, okay, list test at 0. So let's go ahead and run this, right? Test at 0 is going to be David. Test at 1 is going to be Sat. Test at 2 is going to be Yang. So lists, we refer to the contents of a list using numbers, right? Using indexes. However, let's say that we don't want to do that. We can actually do something, we can use something called the dictionary, which allows us to refer to elements through keys. So a key can be literally any immutable object. So what that means is that it cannot be directly edited. So for example, a list is mutable, right? Because I can say test at 0 equals, like, let's say Kevin, right? So now test at 0 is now Kevin. However, like, let's say for a string, I can't say hello at 0 equals, right? Like it's immutable, which means it can't be changed. And it kind of makes sense, right? Imagine if the words in a actual dictionary could change randomly, right? That breaks the whole point of the dictionary. So in Python, again, generally you'll use like a string or a number or something as the key. And they can be mixed, right? So you can have like test at 0, and then after, like dictionary at 0, and then after you can also have a key called dictionary at like David, and that still works. So let's go ahead and make one. So let's call it test D. So for example, let's say I wanted to associate everyone's ages. So let's say I am 17, right? Let's say Sat is 16, I think. Sat is 16, and Kevin is 17 as well. So test D. Now we can refer to it directly through the string. I now have 17, right? If I wanted to create a new value, I can do that. I can say test D at, let's say 5, if someone's name is 5, and we'll say they're ironically 15 years old. So now test D at 5 is now 15. Okay, so this is it's very similar to an actual dictionary, right? You just have a key and then a value, and this value can be anything. Okay, the value does not need to be immutable. I can have, for example, if this were to be like my test scores, right? I can have a list in here, and this can all be mixed. Okay, so now if I say test D at David, I get a list. Okay, like you can literally put anything in this, including like functions and other, like it's crazy. Like you can literally put anything inside a dictionary. Just the key cannot be mutable, but the object that's being stored at the key can literally be anything. All right. So another way that you can create dictionaries is to use this format. So say dict, and then after you'd put your key. So like David, and then you say equals, and then comma, and then Sat equals 16, Kevin equals 17. And then after, if you just run this, you will get the exact same result as if you were to use with the curly braces. However, as per personal preference, I use this method, the first method, a lot, because this is actually how you create a very similar type of thing in JavaScript, which is another language I know. And it just kind of looks a little more neater, right? Where this is like It's just a little more messier, in my opinion. But of course, there's no real difference, so you can choose whatever you want. So another way that you can access, so for example, we've been accessing everything with the dictionary through a square bracket, right? So we can say we're doing test D at David. However, you can also do test D.get and then put the key. This is very similar to if you've used Java, a hash map. A dictionary is actually implemented as a hash map. So you can use .get and you can get it as a key. All right, and then after again, you can replace. So if I want to say I am now going to have, this is going to be my age again. I can just replace it. Now test D at David is now 17 again. All right. And at the very, a few more things is deleting keys. So let's say I want to delete a key. So I want to delete Kevin's age. I can say del. So same thing again as what we used for a list. We say test D. So right, we can say test D at Kevin. We can see that that is 17. But if we say del test D at Kevin. Now if I say test D at Kevin, it is now key error, right? It's no longer in there. If I just print it out, you can't see it's only me and Sat now. All right. You can also say .pop, which also works. So let's say David. And then after this, this works exactly like a list where it will return the value before removing it. So now as you can see, test D is only Sat. All right. And final thing here is just clearing it. If you want to get rid of everything, you can just .clear, and now it is an empty dictionary. Okay, so any questions about that? I know it kind of just rattled off a bunch of things, but they're pretty straightforward, I think. And they're very similar. Again, one of the really nice things about Python is everything's implemented pretty similarly. So you can kind of guess around if you aren't completely sure. But definitely dictionaries share a lot of the same methods and keywords as a list. So any questions about dictionaries or anything that we did today? Okay, and just one last thing is just to please keep in mind that all of your keys in a dictionary have to be unique. So just how you can't have like two things at the 0th index of a list, you can't have two things at like David, for example, right? It'll just be replaced. Okay, so if that's it, that's gonna kind of finish up our lesson for today. I have, if you guys scroll down to the lesson plan, I have a few more questions as well as a few kind of more list focused questions, as well as an exercise from ICS 3U for lists. So I would really encourage you guys to do that, especially the list one, because that has some list comprehension. Again, it looks like most of you had some trouble doing the list comprehension problem I gave you. So I would definitely look into that. And after we can take any of those up next week. But other than that, if you guys don't have any questions, yes. Yes. So because, right, this is about equality. So David does not equal David, right? It doesn't equal it, so it won't be the same. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's just capital lowercase. It's just that it's a different key, right? So it's not the same. Does that answer your question? So basically, as long as if you want to guarantee that you'll be able to access something through a key, you just need to make sure that whenever you say them, it comes out true. Any other questions about dictionaries? They are still pretty useful, but I don't think I've used them as much as lists in contests, but still very useful. Okay, so if you guys don't have any questions, I will let you guys go now. Thanks for coming again. And again, please try a few of these problems, right? Just do a problem or two a day, right? That's literally the only way that you're going to be able to improve. Like this 2-hour session doesn't really help you that much if you're not practicing. So please practice. If you have any questions, right, I'm pretty much always going to be able to get back to you within a few hours if you post it inside the Discord. But yeah, please don't be afraid to ask, right? If you have trouble, please ask. If you still are kind of shy, you can always just direct message me and I'll be happy to help you out. But other than that, that is it for this week. There will be a video of the lesson. There will be a video of the lesson up on YouTube as well. Probably in like a day or so. So if you have anything you want to look over again, it'll be on the YouTube channel as well. Okay, so I will see you guys next week. Thanks for coming out, and I hope you see you next week.